it got quiet, like y'all knew something was going to happen. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. I'm Leslie Rand Pickett, and I work with the Department of Computer Science in Engagement and External Relations. And we really just want to thank you so much for being with us for the Labcorp Leadership and Technology Speaker Series tonight. This is actually our 18th year of running this seminar series, and it's been one of really the best seminar series across campus. And we are really thankful for the sponsorship of Labcorp to make this event possible. And tonight, they have also brought us a speaker as well as the sponsorship of the series. So we're really excited to have them as well. This is the second of our 2 planned talks for the year. And so it'll be the last one that you're going to see for 25-26, but it'll be back next year. So be sure to look for those in the fall as well. Before we start, I did just want to give a couple of reminders, a couple of housekeeping announcements. First of which is to make sure you've turned off devices that make any sound during the presentation tonight. I always forget that my laptop makes sounds, and every time somebody pings me on Discord, we get a nice sound. So please go ahead and silence all those things for me. And then also, I want to let everybody know this talk is being broadcast on YouTube. So it is streaming live tonight. You are not going to be on camera, though, don't worry, because it's coming from the back of the room. And so you don't have to worry about that from a privacy standpoint. Very important to tonight's topic. And if you are looking for seminar credit, I had quite a few students approach me in the beginning. I'm looking for a student with a card swipe for seminar credit. That person is not here. Okay, so what that means is I'm going to give you my email address. My name is Leslie Rand Pickett. And you can find me in the directory when you start typing in the email. Leslie Rand Pickett. Send me a message. We'll make sure that you get credit for having a smiling face here. Thank you so much. I know some of you need this credit. And then also, if you have a form that you received for a class, myself and also Tammy Coates. Great, Tammy's making some copies of a list so we can sign some things for you. Okay, perfect. So we're going to give you some instructions on how to get credit for tonight, so don't worry, okay? Don't panic. We will get you taken care of. Also, we're going to have a representative from the early talent team here from Labcorp as well, and I'm going to point her out to you so that at the end you can ask questions about internships and jobs with Labcorp. We want to make sure that you get connected to them for opportunities as well. Okay. So, done with all the housekeeping, all the boring stuff. Now on to the exciting things. Just wanted to give an overview of our speaker tonight. And we have tonight Mr. Frank Price as our guest speaker. We are super excited to have you, Frank.
Thank you.
Frank is a security practitioner since 1993, and he has built and refined cybersecurity and information risk management programs in multiple business sectors, including international banking, global telecommunications, and high-end retail. However, his passion and main focus has been in healthcare, where he's led programs for Medco Health Solutions, CVS Health, and now Labcorp, where he currently serves as the Chief Information Risk Officer. He previously served on the board of directors for the Health Information Sharing and Analysis Center, a global nonprofit offering healthcare stakeholders a trusted community for sharing physical and cyber threat intelligence and best practices. He's a member of the Health Sector Coordinating Council's Post-Quantum Cryptography Task Group and is a regular panelist and speaker at Forums for Cybersecurity and Resilience. He's a bachelor's degree in Information Systems Management from New York University and previously served as an adjunct professor at Rutgers University in New Jersey, where he taught information security concepts to students as part of an experimental work education program called SOAR. Please join me, in welcoming our speaker tonight, Mr. Frank Price.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. And hello, NC State. Actually, you saved me a slide, so I don't have to read one of mine now, but that's great. So I might tell you something that's not on the slide. I knew when I got here that I was in the right place, because as soon as I walked in the door, you've got that list of upcoming events, and there was something that said, "Be a wolf, not a fish," P-H-I-S-H. And I said, okay, this is my kind of town, this is my kind of school. And I have to give you one other compliment, which is that, as you heard, I come from New York University. That's where I graduated from, and I love them, but with all due respect, being a part of a wolf pack is way cooler than being one of the violets. I gotta give it up. Okay. Maybe one other thing to tell you that isn't in there is that I am part of a very important company, I think. Labcorp is the company that got me from the get-go. One of my colleagues in the healthcare space actually called me up and asked me, he said, "I don't think you want to move, but would you like to take a look at Labcorp?" And as soon as I looked up the website and it said, "Harnessing Science for Human Good and Improving Health and Improving Lives," it had me right there. For those of you who don't know, I worked before that at Hudson's Bay. We mentioned high-end retail. Basically with a background in banking, retail, and healthcare. If you've ever done a transaction, if you've ever bought something nice for yourself, or you've ever had a diagnostics test, a drug test, or went to a pharmacy, you're probably one of my clients, and at some point I've helped protect your data. So I thank you for giving me the opportunity, and hopefully I can continue to do that. Basically, Labcorp is the global leader of innovative and comprehensive laboratory services. It's 70,000, roughly, of me and my closest friends, providing support for more than 75% of the new drugs and therapeutic products that were approved, say in 2024. And we perform more than 700 million tests annually for patients around the world. And my role in that, if you think about it, is that literally and figuratively, the lifeblood of the company is information. And information has to flow freely in order for an organism, a company, to survive, but it also needs to have an effective immune system to protect against any kind of a threat. And that's the role that the Information Risk Program and the Office of Information Security play. Basically, our mission is to protect and defend and enable the innovative use of information, right, to improve health and improve lives. The first aspect of that is to cultivate a risk-aware culture, right? It starts with people. It starts with people like you. We have to maintain the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. And we have to develop and share, because it doesn't do any good if we keep it to ourselves, tactics, techniques, procedures, and insight that will help defend the entire healthcare infrastructure. We don't keep the good stuff to ourselves. We want to help share with everyone else what are the best practices to protect, defend, make available information, improve its integrity, improve its availability. We want to create a concept of digital trust and advance that. Right? Digital trust means you can be confident that the quality of the information, the availability, you're going to hear me keep saying that, and the integrity of that information is something that you can rely on, right? Very important, particularly in healthcare delivery. And we want to enable innovation, right? We want to make the world a better place. I think it's a noble goal. I'm going to show you a couple of slides. These are actually the slides that I showed my team when I first came to Labcorp. And I want you to get the concept, because it's not the classic data security program. Data security is a term that we used when I came up in this field. It wasn't even, I guess, a concept of cybersecurity. We called it data security. But in the first point is, we are driven by data, right? Our concept is that we are the bodyguards of the company and its information. We are not its wardens. It would be nice if you could just take all the information that needed to be protected and say, keep it here, and we're going to lock it down, we're going to watch it 24/7, but that's not how it works. Like I said, it has to move, it has to flow, it has to be part of the information delivery infrastructure. Threats continuously evolve, so we have to evolve. What worked yesterday probably won't work tomorrow. It's an ongoing evolution, and we have to continue to stay up to date. Our controls have to be effective, but they also have to be fit for purpose. The analogy that I used to use was, if in the old days, if you were going to be, say, in a battle, you were going to attack a castle, you might put on a metal suit of armor. But if the actual mission was to cross a moat, suit of armor probably isn't fit for purpose. It's going to be effective, it'll protect you, but it actually won't get you where you need to go. Another concept, and I think this is good because we're at NC State, everyone, we teach, we learn, and we lead at every level because everyone has something they need to learn and everyone has something that they can teach. It's not a one-way distribution system. We share all of our tactics and techniques. The other rule is we speak geek only when spoken to. Now, all of us might get really excited about talking about the difference between symmetric and asymmetric encryption, but I guarantee you that the folks that you're going to be helping to protect in your lives, they might not feel the same way about it. And we have to have a growth mindset. I'm going to quote one of my favorite speakers here, but the most dangerous words in any institution are, "We've always done it this way." Don't ever settle for that. First time you hear that, that's when you need to start questioning what's being done. And most important of all, we don't say no, we say yes and here's how, because it's about enabling a solution, not just about preventing something from happening, right? If somebody says something to you and you have some concern from a security standpoint, first thing you need to think about is what's the outcome and how can we achieve it, not to prevent it from happening. One other thing, before we go a little further, I just want to ask, I know that you come from different disciplines, but how many people here are involved directly in the cybersecurity program? Okay, all right. I have some envy. My people over here. I guess when I was your age, I've waited my whole life to say that. When I was your age, everyone who does what I do, you chose cybersecurity. All of us, cybersecurity chose us. What do I mean? Almost every single person who came up in my generation got into this field because something went wrong. They had to respond to an event. Information was either, threatened, it was either, stolen, damaged, corrupted, made unavailable. And we got through it. And somebody else said, wow, you were kind of good at that. Why don't you do that full time? And if you're young and idealistic, you say, sure. So I do have envy that you chose this. It wasn't even a concept. I can remember the first time that I spoke to someone who worked for me and I said, we were all telling our war stories, right? That's another thing we all do. And this person, I said, well, how did you get into it? Well, there was somebody shut off the data center. They hit the power off button instead of the light switch. Okay, how did you get into it? Well, there was a threat actor that kind of broke in and was attempting to access information they shouldn't. How did you get into it? Oh, it looked like a cool major, so I signed up. And we all, really? That was not a thing. So again, I think it's great that you've chosen this. Information risk management, as distinct from security, it's about serving as a trusted advisor to the business on the risks associated with the existing and innovative uses of information. It's thinking continuously about how information can be delivered, but protected while it's being delivered, and allowing new uses, because innovation is what drives change, and healthcare is all about innovation. We'll cover a couple of other terms. Resilience, right? Delivering on all intended committed outcomes in spite of any adverse event. That's a general definition of resilience. In the world of cybersecurity, the concept of cyber resilience, which we'll come back to later, is delivering on all intended and committed outcomes in spite of an adverse cyber event. So this is actually a change in thinking that's come over time, where resilience is I guess the parent or the umbrella concept, and cyber resilience, rather than being something separate, is now a subcategory of overall resilience. I have one of my resilience folks here in the audience I can see, so, he's helped make that change for us. This is the question that we ask ourselves every day. How do we enable the innovative use of information while ensuring its protection? And it is a balance. Particularly in healthcare, there is a bevy of regulations, nationally and internationally. We have to make sure that we are incorporating those, but that we're also allowing the business to move forward. So let's dive in a little bit. This is a little discussion about the cost of data breaches, some numbers. And I'll just give you another caveat here. I have some housekeeping to do as well. When you hear me mention a company here, it's because that's the source of the information. It's not necessarily an endorsement of that company. It's certainly not also a criticism of that company, but I just want to be clear about that. And this information comes from a survey that was done by IBM. It's the Cost of Data Breach report from 2025. And so in 2025, the average cost of a data breach globally, right, around the rest of the world, was about $4.4 million. In the US, it was $10.2 million. It was higher. And in healthcare, the average cost of the healthcare breach was $7.42 million, which is actually down from the year before. What accounts for the difference? There are different regulations and penalties in the United States that factor into the cost of the breach. And while, on this one side you say the trend that it went down a little bit is good, but still that's a significant amount of, opportunity cost there. What could we do with that money if we weren't using it to deal with the loss of availability, the denial of services, the inability of people to get care when they need it? And one point here, the percentage of breaches in which PII, which again, personally identifiable information, occurred was 53%. So more than half of the breaches, your information, your personal information, was the target. Threat actors made it personal. We had to treat it that way. What we're going to talk about a little more tonight is the outlook for 2026. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence, which we view as both a risk and an opportunity in cybersecurity and information risk management. We'll talk a little bit about how humans are the target. We'll talk about the evolution in the concepts of ransomware, the growth of cybercrime as a business, post-quantum computing resilience, and then a little bit about the hope for the future. So let's dig in. So, artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. In 2025, 1 in 6 breaches involved attackers leveraging some form of artificial intelligence. That doesn't seem like a large number, but basically what it means is there's an indication now that these tools, which we are using to transform for human good, can also, in the wrong hands, can also be used to make a threat actor more effective. Examples of that would be social engineering. As I mentioned phishing before, I think everyone's pretty familiar with the concept of phishing. There are factors that we've used in technology for years to detect in phishing. Well, maybe there's some characters that don't look the way they should, or the grammar seems a little bit off. Artificial intelligence can be used to smooth all of those out, and we train people to recognize those. We train systems to recognize those, and now all of a sudden that's not effective anymore. So on the one side, the threat actor is able to defeat what used to be the most reliable control to prevent someone from being socially engineered with phishing. The counter tactic was that several of the email vendors and email protection vendors started leveraging artificial intelligence to change the conversation, to kind of change it to, rather than looking for these static indicators, I'm going to look at what is the message trying to get you to do? What in behavior are we incenting? Are we trying to create a sense of urgency in the person who received it? Is it coming from some place that looks like, maybe it's relatively more important? So there's a high power distance, and it's kind of creating a sense of urgency in the individual. So shifting from what is this static indicator to what is the behavior that we're trying to elicit. a little bit more. And when I say AI firsts in 2025, I'm going to cheat a little bit because some of this actually occurred in 2024 in November, but it actually is something that became, more enlightened in 2025. The first is the Echo leak, right? That was a successful prompt injection attack. The adversary supplied a malicious instruction to subvert the original intended behavior of an AI digital assistant, which shall remain nameless. You can look it up. Basically, they used remote unauthenticated data exfiltration via a crafted email, and they coerced the tool into accessing internal files and transmitting their contents to an attacker-controlled server. This was something that had been considered theoretical. Now it's become part of the toolkit for threat actors. The second was the first reported AI-orchestrated cyber espionage attack, and this was the one that actually occurred in November 2024, where the threat actor manipulated Anthropic's Claude tool in an attempt to infiltrate about 30 global targets with some limited success. And it basically targeted large tech companies, financial institutions, chemical manufacturing companies, and government agencies. The significance of this was that it didn't involve any substantial human intervention, right? So literally, artificial intelligence being used to orchestrate, run the attack. If I can borrow from a movie, The Terminator, it doesn't sleep, it doesn't rest, it will not give up until it succeeds, and it can go 24/7. That has implications, obviously, for the institutions that are being affected and their customers. It has implications for security practitioners because it means we have to operate at that same level. It means we have to leverage the same technology for defense. And the reason I'm mentioning Anthropic here, and I didn't mention the other company, is in this case, Anthropic acted as a really socially responsible member of the community. Remember, I said we share our tactics and techniques. They were the ones who alerted us, really not just us, alerted the community of the event. They provided an analysis of it, and they shared their observations. This is how we operate as a community. This is how any of you who pursue this as a career will be expected to perform, to basically, raise the current, raise the tide, and lift all of the boats. The third one here is not really, strictly speaking, a security item, but it borders on privacy, which Leslie mentioned before, right? And privacy and security are kind of like siblings. This in 2025 was the first known federal search warrant for a generative AI platform for information about the users. And I'm not suggesting that there is anything wrong with what the Department of Homeland Security did here, because the context was a child exploitation investigation. DHS asked OpenAI for user data, including the details of other conversations with ChatGPT, names and addresses associated with relevant accounts, and payment data. And OpenAI complied with the request. And I only mention it not in defense of anyone doing anything nefarious, but to recognize that the information that you share in ChatGPT or another similar tool, does live forever. And you're going to, they can be used for these purposes. So this is kind of, 2025 was the year where all of these things kind of converged, and it really means that we're operating in a different world than we were before. Now, maybe what I was saying makes it sound like there's some sort of an adversarial relationship between cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, and nothing could be further from the truth. They actually have the ability to enhance each other. Right? And so here we put together a couple of examples, right? Cybersecurity enhances artificial intelligence by preventing or slowing the rate of model drift, protecting privacy and confidentiality, detecting and remove vulnerabilities to AI prompt injection attacks, preserving data integrity, and preventing data leaks. Now, how does artificial intelligence enhance cybersecurity? It improves threat detection. It improves our speed of response. It allows us to, engage in predictive analytics or consume them from, the agents themselves. It improves vulnerability management, and it enhances our overall threat intelligence. So I'd say these tools are neither good nor bad. It's the use that we make of them. This is how we choose to use them going forward. So ransomware. Ransomware is evolving as well. We're going to talk about a shift in tactics. So ransomware traditionally was introducing malware to encrypt data, usually through either an email or some sort of an open transmission. And basically the idea was to demand a ransom, lock it up so it can't be used, and force the company to pay to obtain the key for decrypting the data with the goal of restoring normal operations. It is a kind of extortion, but what we've seen since then is actually much more significant, right? It's the concept of cyber extortion with ransomware as a component. The concept is double extortion, which is the encryption of data or not, stealing the data, threatening to release the data. This impairs operations, it creates damage to reputation, and it has impact to customers, patients, et cetera. So it's beyond making the data unavailable, it's potentially stealing it, releasing it, creating more pressure for the company to pay. This has now come up to triple and quadruple extortion, which is also intended to further turn up the heat on the victims by engaging in denial of service attacks, simultaneous or immediately after the other attack, making direct contact with or harassing the customers whose data has been taken, and leveraging media exposure. So it's really moved, and one of the points here, which we will come back to, is they don't have to encrypt the data, right? That makes it unavailable. Stealing the data, whether it's encrypted or not, whether it's encrypted, there's a method for dealing with that, but just having that data beyond the control of the company creates that pressure. So we started talking about threat actors. Let's cover a little bit about their motivations. There's a whole group of them, right? The first, and maybe the oldest, thrill-seeking, right? Look what I can do. In the old days, we used to call this site defacement, seeing if you could break into a site, bring it down, replace one of the front pages with something that you thought was funny, or your name, or something like that. If it really is the digital equivalent of vandalism. Hacktivism is more to achieve a particular goal around creating a denial of service or creating some attention for a particular political or social point of view that the hacker wants to provide. And I should be careful here. I use the term hacker. I think there are a couple of folks in the audience who would remember that originally hackers were the folks who actually could code, and that crackers, that was the original term, was for the people who were breaking in. But it's now become hacktivism. The third motivation is industrial espionage, intellectual property theft, competitive advantage. And this can be either within the private sector. There are actually nation states who sponsor threat actors to gain intellectual property from companies so they can bring that back home and improve their lot at home. Then there's naturally traditional espionage, intelligence gathering about either government activities or anything that might create an advantage either militarily or politically. Regional political advantage is also done. So I think an example of this would probably be the government of Iran is typically involved in attempting to engage in cyber espionage to gain advantage over the neighbors in the region. And then the one that most frequently comes up is profit, right? Cyber crime as a business. Cybercrime is profitable. What I think is interesting, and I just want to check here, I want to move forward, we'll talk about that in a minute. First thing I want to say is it's actually developed to the point where we now have aspects of what looks like a normal business. If you hear about any of these, there have been studies on it. There are groups that have specialization, right? There's one group that specializes in breaking in. There's another group who's, think of them as departments of an organization. The next one will produce the code that's used in the attack. There's actually, and this is hard to believe, but there are actually groups that are involved in almost a customer service function for the entity that was, a victim of ransomware, where they will actually help them process the request and help negotiate. And then there's a different group that will actually help with the delivery of the payment. It mimics an effective business. It is a very profitable business, and it is been stunning to watch it go from being individuals to actually entire syndicated organizations where you now have concepts such as ransomware as a service, people who will just be able to pay a fee and get a mock-up of a site that they can use for social engineering. And all of this, not to bring it back to it, all of this is now moving much more quickly, and it is also being enhanced by artificial intelligence. And it is a problem. I want to give a shout out here to Gary Milievsky. This is from The True Cost of Cybercrime from the Cyber Defense magazine. He wrote the article. I want to give him credit for that. Is that basically from direct losses, 150 billion to 250 billion. Business downtime, 500 billion to 1 trillion. Brand damage, 100 billion. Nation-state cyber attacks, consequences of 200 billion or more. And cyber insurance impact of 50 billion to 100 billion. And again, these are estimates. But you have to look at this. This is consuming a lot of the resources of a lot of companies and governments. And the other thing is, this isn't even really counting the impact to the individuals, right? That is harder to measure. These are the losses that we know about. The other impact is to society, to the individual. The people who can't get their privacy back, right? You can't get the information back once it's been disclosed. Okay, I only have about 40 slides on post-quantum cryptography, so kidding. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of concepts. Since you're in cybersecurity programs, the sun will go out before encryption will be broken. Has anybody ever heard that? Yeah, okay. I heard that. I've said that. I've taught that. And I believed it. It's not true anymore, right? Bet on the sun. The sun will be around and encryption will be broken, but not today. There's a concept in post-quantum cryptography called Q-day, right? The limitation of encryption was you couldn't crack it because there was insufficient resources. There wasn't enough computing power. It was resource intensive. There wasn't a way to do the complexity of the calculations. Q-day is the theoretical day upon which the processing power will be there and the capability will be there to break encryption, at which point the information is available. And remember I said earlier when we were talking about cyber criminals in the cyber extortion concept, taking information and they don't even need to encrypt it. The second concept is harvest now and decrypt later. Why don't they have to encrypt it? Encrypting it is only one way of extorting information out of a company that needs that information to run. The concept of harvest now and decrypt later is they can take the information, and even if it has no utility for them at this time because they can't break it, they know that at some point in the future, after Q-day, they will be able to. Now, what kind of a timeline are we talking about, right? And I'm going to say this because for those of you that are considering this career, this is right in the middle of your careers. I intend to be around for it too, but it's something you should know about. Over the next 10 years, theoretically, by say 2035, the idea is that about 10 years out, somewhere in there, the idea that we will actually have the ability to, break standard encryption. And I don't want to make it sound apocalyptic, right? But the two things to be aware of. One, under this impact, digital signatures would probably no longer be valid, right? Think about that. And, RSA would be impacted. There's symmetric key encryption would still be okay. But the overall impact is a loss of digital trust, right? We mentioned that concept at the beginning. An uneasiness. You don't know anymore if you can trust it, right? So it's survivable, but what does it mean for any of you considering a career in security or cryptography, or really anyone who's working in information technology, is that over the next couple of years, I think by 2030, the National Institute of Standards and Technology is going to start deprecating all of the existing algorithms for encryption. And companies will have to, in the meantime, do an inventory of all of their technology. We'll talk a little bit about that here. Do an inventory of all of their technology, identify where they're using cryptographic functions, and replace them. For some of you, this is going to be your life's work and your main task. These are directly from NIST, by the way. This is not something that I wrote. But I want to point out two things on here. The first concept on the left-hand side in the middle there, develop crypto agility, the ability to quickly and efficiently adapt your cryptographic functions and frameworks to the new post-quantum computing standards or to respond to emerging threats. But it starts with the items on the right side. Catalog all of your assets, right? Not something you have to do, but your potential employers will. Develop a migration plan, design systems with agility, and operationalize post-quantum cryptography, which means deploying the solutions and integrating them into your enterprise operations. Should take you all weekend. Okay. This is something that you don't have to worry about today. It's something that you have to recognize as a condition of the environment in which you're all going to operate, in which we all operate, right? Don't panic. That's the first thing. In any situation, don't panic. It's not going to be the end of the world. We've had discussions, and we mentioned that I'm in a working group, and I think that the overall theme has been, even feedback to me, because I've used some analogies that can sound a little dire sometimes. It is survivable. Don't magnify it, but don't ignore it either. All right. So we talked a little bit about some fairly, daunting scenarios. Makes it sound grim. And I want to talk about hope for the future. What do I mean by that? Well, it's all of you, right? I walked in here today, and I was over in the other building. Leslie was nice enough to host me over there, and I saw all of the disciplines that are part of your program, right? You are different than everyone who came before. I'm going to use an analogy here. Has anyone here ever seen or read 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke? Okay, you've read it. All right, there were a couple of sequels that he wrote to the book, and one of them was 2061. And in that one, this is not significant to the plot, but it stayed with me. The protagonist, Haywood Floyd, is talking to someone, I think maybe a relative, but it's a younger person, a child who was not born on Earth, and in fact had never been in Earth's gravity, had lived in an entirely different space, was unencumbered by all of the past of Earth, was unencumbered by, the physical limitations. All of you have been born into a completely different world than the one that all of us who, accidentally found our way into cybersecurity were born. You think differently. All of this is second nature to you, right? You chose this path. And that's why, regardless of the problems, regardless of the cyber threat outlook, I have hope for the future, because I have already seen what all of you can do. And I look forward to watching you develop the solutions to these challenges. And I want to say thank you for your time. We're certainly going to leave some time for questions, but I also want to say, how many of you are going to do the Hack NC State? Anybody going? Yes, there we go. No better way to spend Valentine's Day, I got to say. I want to thank you for your time, to entertain your questions, but I really appreciate you all coming out here tonight to engage on this topic with me. Thank you.
And I have the microphone for questions too, so if anybody has a question, raise your hand and I'll come in. Let me get my steps in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi. So one of the things that's been of interest to me and has affected, I think, probably a few of us in here, is not just an attack coming from an outside source but from an inside source, maybe from like a poorly integrated plugin. We're seeing this big rush of, hey, let's integrate an AI chatbot on our sites. I'm sure it had getting access to everything would be fine. So like in 22, Labcorp had an issue where their Google plugin was sending people's data back to Google. So that was during your tenure. You might have experience with that. So can you tell us how that kind of thing can be handled and dealt with?
Yeah, I think and that's a good question because that combines a couple of different concepts. And I know a couple of the people that are here from Labcorp are going to smile about this one, but a lot of it has to do with making, I mentioned the human component. Policies and standards get a lot of, everyone kind of looks at policy and standards as that which you must do. Some of them are difficult, but it's important to connect a standard and an idea of what you want to achieve with the best possible method for doing it. I think, the idea of, okay, there's a positive outcome to being able to track this information. It has utility. It actually helps in delivering healthcare or whatever service. You can never split it from thinking about what we used to call the unhappy flow, right? You have to say, this is the outcome I'm looking for. This is actually one of the basic principles of doing any kind of a risk assessment of a system or proposal, is not just what is it going to achieve, what's the outcome that I want, what are the negative consequences, or what should I be watching out for, what's the unintended effect. And the way that you do that is you have robust systems development lifecycle. You always make sure you have more than one set of eyes on the problem. You make sure that there's a review of adherence to standards, and also making sure that you're monitoring to see, in this case, where's the information going? Is it the minimum amount of information that's required? And is it fit for purpose? Do you need that information in order to achieve the effect that you want to? I'll pause there for a second. Does that help, or is that okay? Good. All right.
Other questions? Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Oh,
Down in front. You can go ahead and get started. No problem.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. When you were talking about trading war stories with other people, thank you.
Yep.
Do you have any particular ones that you would can say? I guess.
Yeah, that's a challenge. That's why we, I guess we have Chatham House rules for most of what we do. If I would kind of make it more generic so that I don't break any of the rules of the community, most of the events are, and maybe I can tie it to this, it almost reflects on the answer I just gave, is that there is always the need to look at the unintended consequence, right? The approach is, what am I trying to accomplish? How do I build it? How do I, what's the worst that could happen? And then make sure, how do I mitigate those risks? And then confirm that what I did to mitigate those risks is effective, and then continue to do that. But it typically starts with, and this is something that we did talk about, the human factor, right? Humans they always have good intentions most of the time, and there are unintended consequences. And at one point, I said most of us who are in cybersecurity, our job comes down to protecting our companies from the worst outcomes of our best intentions. And maybe that's the most generic way I can say it. I can't give specifics. There are a couple of resources on the internet. There's the data breach database that has stories of all of the different hacks, the impacts of them, what the factor was that caused it, what the impact of was, and how it was mitigated. Okay, all right. That was a good question. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes. I need 2 microphones. Note to self for next time.
future of cybersecurity in general look like in the next 5 years? Just because like more and more people are like adopting usage of AI, and like how is Labcorp kind of like preparing for, you know, whatever happens in that realm?
Yeah, this is a daily conversation. It was probably the last 2 meetings before I came here. And I won't give away strategy, but I can tell you in general, similar to what I said in the slide, cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, you know, need each other. Any solution that we build will have the concept of both because we're part of the critical infrastructure of the United States of America. Maybe some of you remember Labcorp had that significant role in the COVID response, but every day we're expected to be ready for the worst possible outcome. So cybersecurity and artificial intelligence are together. I would say there are aspects of it where the models that are used for artificial intelligence and the use cases that are coming up, it's basically going to be a situation where the typical model of detection, I talked a little bit about, looking for a particular factor, that's not going to work anymore. There's going to need to be agents that are, doing those functions of security and not replacing people, but enhancing the speed at which items are detected, enhancing and maybe self-healing before this gets rolled to production, so to speak. That would be the classic model, that artificial intelligence actually has a role not just in delivering the value for the business, but also for detecting and preventing those situations from ever arising where there could be an exploit. There's a lot of excitement about how artificial intelligence will enhance security and how security will enhance artificial intelligence. Okay.
Any others?
Come and join us.
Great. Well, I definitely think this topic tonight, it's personal for all of us, right? Cybersecurity is something that impacts everybody. We're all consumers of healthcare, consumers in the finance industry, as you mentioned, retail. Our students also get a lot of invitations for job search scams. They're job seekers and internship seekers all the time, so
Yep.
I find they're particularly targeted for that, especially I think students and new graduates who haven't been through a lot of job searches before. You may not know a lot about what's this normally like,
Right.
and so it does increase your vulnerability for that as well. Thank you so much, Frank.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate you all. Let's give them another hand.
Thank you.
For this time.
Go Wolfpack.
Yeah. Do you have a couple minutes in case folks want to ask you something individually?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then Sarah, are you in the back? Yes. So Sarah from Labcorp is here as well. And speaking of jobs and internships, there was a reason for that. She is here and can answer questions for you all if you have any of those about applying for opportunities with Labcorp, and maybe has some swag as well. All right. That's always a great thing.
For everybody, yep. We have some IT internships available right now if you're interested. So yeah.
Thank you so much, and you guys know where to find her in the back. If you need something signed, students, find myself, find Tammy Coates, who's in the back raising her hand. And then the PhD students that might need an email for the seminar credit, I'm Leslie Rand Pickett. You can find me. If not, if I don't pop up in your directory, come and find me here, and I'll be glad to help you with that. Thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you.
I do have a small token for you as well, too.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, everybody. Have a great night.
Security people love tokens.
Yeah. It's actually a coffee token.
Thank you.